Today we're going to go over the build I've been using in the late game for speed farming. A lot of you have been asking for this one on the live stream. Here it is. And we're going to go over everything, the skills, the Paragon, the gear choices, and we'll talk a little bit about when you can go this build as well, because I feel like that's a very important thing to keep in mind. It's not a early game build. You are going to need to hit some pretty steep gear requirements and have some of your Paragon board to be able to play this one efficiently. So just keep that in mind moving forward. Now, we'll start with the skill choices here. You'll see that we've got Lunging Strike first, and this is Combat Lunging Strike. This is the proc Berserking, which we use a lot. And also, I use it primarily as a mobility tool. Now, I have this set up actually to be cast with my two one-handers. I get asked, why do I do this? It's just mostly for the attack speed more than anything else, but there's also a chance that you can proc additional Fury gain if you hit a CC'd enemy. So it's not really for that. It's more for the attack speed than anything else, but that's why I personally do it. We have Violent Whirlwind. We have 3 points into Pressure Point. We only have 1 point into Rallying Cry. We've gone Tactical Rallying Cry. My resource regeneration is fantastic, so I don't need to worry about this. I only have points in Challenging Shout, none of the specialized notes. I don't need the Fury regen, and I don't like the way the maximum health actually unfortifies me when I cast it. And this is a bit of a problem because we use Temerity as a unique, and we can have, like, you know, full uptime on Fortify otherwise, and we're never really ever taking damage to our health, so I don't feel like it's that valuable for me right now. 1 point into Warcry to get into Enhanced, so we have access to the Berserking. 3 points into Booming, 1 into Raid Leader, nothing new there. 3 points into Swiftness. Like I said, this is for speed running, so the movement speed is a must for me. However, if you are trying to move into this a little bit earlier and you don't have the resource regen, perhaps this is an option for you. If you need the tankiness, again, this is also some options here for you to reallocate the points to. Prolific Fury, that's pretty much a must-have. Now, one thing that I've done that I don't see most people doing with this build is actually gone into No Mercy using Hamstring. We have an aspect that does allow us to apply a small amount of bleed, which means we can use the knock-on effects of like killing bleeding enemies or anything like that. So for me, it's a little bit of a, I must have this because my crit is otherwise quite low compared to other barbarians. But these are more points you could definitely redistribute if you are happy with the amount of crit that you have. So I have Hamstring, which means I can apply a slow, which means I can get additional crit against slowed and immobilized enemies. But this build also stuns a lot, so you know, you kind of have two things working in your favor there. You then have Thick Skin, counter offensive if you are tanky enough. If not, then defensive stance is nice and easy. Wrath of the Berserker, big time, always like a fantastic option for our ultimate. Unbridled Rage, and then these passives here are fantastic. So you want to go heavy-handed, wallop, and concussion. This is where our stuns are coming from, and there's a lot of synergy with this in this build. And these two stats, if you get one of these on your necklace, well done, you are doing big damage. It's very, very lucky. And then moving over into just quickly touching on the expertise, we're using the two-handed axe expertise. This gives us access to 15% multiplicative damage in increase to vulnerable enemies. And of course, we're using a mace, so we have access to this, and you'll see why berserking and vulnerable and stunned and all that is so important. 10% chance to gain 2 fury when hitting an enemy, double this amount while berserking. And then deal 15% increased multiplicative critical strike damage to stunned or vulnerable enemies while berserking. So this is why concussion is so good. Moving into the gear, first is the helmet, and cooldown reduction, max life, armor, those are pretty much must-haves. As for the stat, this depends on your Paragon board. I need Dex, I went for Dex. This is an excellent helmet. I've got Disobedience on it. I'm experimenting a little bit with not using Grasping Whirlwind and seeing what I can use instead. I just find Grasping Whirlwind, it doesn't proc as often as I'd like it to, and in dungeons, honestly, I'm not missing it at all, only really in the open world. Chest piece, we are using a regular chest. It's a quadruple damage reduction chest. These are not particularly good rolls. I would try and aim for the least conditional damage reduction types, so close is fine, bleeding or flat damage reduction, those are kind of my favorites. I don't really like distant. Ranks to challenging shout is fine again, but I'm not a huge fan. I would prefer it if I had rolled like flat damage reduction and like life on this personally, but any 4 damage reductions are great. Gauze, say no more, is a whirlwind build. I'm still running Temerity, and because I'm running Temerity, I'm still running blue gems as well, if you're wondering why the gem choice is blue. While we have this barrier up, we're basically never taking any damage, so our Fortify uptime is very, very high, so we can make very good use of the DR. And, but, you know, I am trying to move away from this. I think a lot of people are trying to move away from Temerity. If you can get, like, 4 damage reduction stats on some good pants, that comes in a lot better. So if you're lucky, then you can move away earlier, and then you can just put red gems in as well, because at that point you've got so much damage reduction, you may be getting more effectiveness from extra health. I don't know the exact math, but it certainly seems to be what most people are now leaning toward doing, and I'll give it some testing in the future myself, but for now, this is how I'm running it. And because we're using Temerity, we also have very good synergy with Conceited. Now, the alternative is when you have regular pants, you just put Aspect of the Protector on them, or you put it somewhere in your gear, and then you basically get the same synergy. So you can always make those things work. Moving on for the boots, double movement speed, Fury cost reduction, that is an absolute must-have, and a main stat. Again, I've gone for strength on this one, just happened to be what I needed. But if you are, if you have got these, you're basically good to go for nearly every single build. Nothing special here. I have gone for Ghost Walk aspect on this one for the additional movement speed, because I can, you know, this is a speed farming build for me. If I am doing higher level content, or if like the content is just more difficult because you're a lower level, definitely take Aspect of the Eluding. That will save your life a lot. Like, Aspect of the Eluding comes in clutch more than you think it will. It's very, very good. Definitely recommend it. As for our main hand weapon, our Mace, the one we'll be using for Whirlwind, weapon damage is massively important. So you can see I actually have an 820 here. Very, very lucky to hit this. But it does have a bit of a goofy stat on it. It has damage to injured enemies, which is not perfect. Not for this build anyways. But other than that, the skills, the modifiers on this one are still good enough. For the imprint, Dire Whirlwind, this could be on either of the two-handers. I just have it on this one. For stat prioritization, really, if you can get them, you want Vulnerable Core, Crit, and then a main stat, or maybe even close damage, depending on if like you've hit all of your stat requirements in your Paragon board. But having just strength as well is still an extremely good stat. So, or in some cases, if you're hardcore, it's better because you also get the armor from it. But there's a lot that you can get, so really you just kind of get the best 4 that you can. And you see here, Crit, Core, Vulnerable, and Strength. I would consider this like a biz roll. This one, not so much because it has close damage, but, you know, everything else is more or less the same. I have all stat because that's what I needed. But yeah, back to the aspects, we have Berserk Ripping on this one. This is very important. It's what allows me to actually use the bleeding stuff, like Hamstring. So you need to have this on here if you're going that route. This weapon has Conceited, of course, and finally Limitless Rage. Again, you can swap this to the other main hander. This is like a giga rolled weapon, huge weapon DPS. Stats a bit on the low roll side, but the actual ones that I got are very, very good. So I'm very happy with those. Rings, it's Echoing Fury Bolt Chieftain, big surprise there. For me, it's double crit, max life, resource gen, if I can get it. Again, I've got close here on this one, which is not ideal, but it definitely still works. But yeah, no surprises there. And as for the amulet, this is where we have Edge Masters. I have Fury cost reduction, cooldown reduction. I consider those must-haves. Movement speed is fantastic, but double movement speed, not so much. It's good for the moment, but I would absolutely much prefer if I hit Wallop or heavy-handed passive on this. Because, again, I just want to kind of pump the numbers up, you know. But that is the gear. Moving on over then to the Paragon board finally, and this is the run-of-the-mill Whirlwind Paragon board that you've all seen in pretty much every build guide I've done, and in a lot of other people's as well. And it's because it's really, really good, right? It works extremely well for this build, but I will give you some tips on how to kind of level through this to make your life a little bit easier if you're just coming into this build not at like level 90. So first and foremost, I've started with Territorial because I needed the damage reduction at the time. But if you're soft core, if you're super tanky, then you could go Exploit, you could go Wrath. As a matter of fact, Exploit, Wrath, and Territorial are interchangeable depending on your needs. If you need extra Fury, then you go Wrath. If you need extra vulnerable damage, then you go Exploit. Or if you want extra damage reduction, you go Territorial. And the nodes are on this board, your first, your third, and your fifth. So you can kind of, you know, mix and match them based on your needs. at the given time. I can't unfortunately tell you exactly what the best order is. You'll have to determine that just based on what you're struggling with as you hit each of these boards, and you can obviously always change them around. You know, if you no longer need Wrath, your Fury's really good, then you put Exploit in, so on and so forth. Martial is our second. Another two I would definitely swap around is I wouldn't have Disembowel last. I would have it here on my fourth board where Imbiber is. And then once I unlock this board, I will then switch them around. And the reason for that is that there's more willpower on this node, and Imbiber has a really good bonus effect when you have lots of willpower. So that's why I swapped them at this point. But for like the actual effect of the cooldown reduction, you want Disembowel first. That's what I feel anyways, personally. And as you're leveling, my recommendation is with this node aside, Warbringer, you basically want to just beeline it straight to every glyph as fast as possible, unlock the bonus, get to the next one, unlock the bonus, get to the next one, and then come back and do all this like auxiliary stuff after you've managed to unlock them all, like here, and like any of the extra nodes in here that I've gone for that are not wholly necessary to activate the actual effect of the glyph there. But if you have any questions about any of this, of course, you can always ask down in the comments below. I'm more than happy to try and answer them. But yeah, if you liked the video, give it a like. If you want to subscribe, you could do that. And I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.